Annabel Malins, British Consul General. General, a question about Afghanistan. Some of the boots on the ground there are British, and we're alongside a number of other international forces and agencies. Could you tell us a little bit about the significance of that international effort and also the challenges around coordination?
Well, it is hugely significant. I think one of the big lessons of the last 9 years or so is that you don't want to take these endeavors on yourself. Winston Churchill, though, your Winston Churchill, did capture some of the challenges of this, when he observed that the only thing worse than allies is having no allies. So, without question, again, his words, not mine. I was privileged to be a multinational force commander in Iraq throughout my time there. We had over 30 some odd countries there. I've served in fact, served in Haiti with a UN force, served in the Balkans with a NATO force, was a NATO commander in Iraq as a 3-star also, well, a US commander as well. So again, the power of many is much better than the power of one. But clearly, you've got to figure out how to coordinate your operations. There are always caveats, by the way. Even when I was in the Balkans as the chief of operations in Bosnia, I had a matrix on my desk, and it had the countries down the left side and various missions across the top, and there were X marks in there as to whether or not this particular country could do that particular mission in that particular location. And what you do is you just work around that. That's not unlike what all of, you are all leaders out here. And in your organizations, you have people who have strengths and you have people who have some weaknesses. And as you all know, the trick is to get the maximum, provide the kind of leadership that gets the best out of everyone. And where necessary, it capitalizes on the strengths that are out there, and where necessary, compensates for some of the shortcomings that all of us have. And so I think that's the issue. You do have to have a mindset, though, that is amenable to this. When I went to CENTCOM, I said, I'd like to sort of replace the old adage of need to know when we prepare intelligence documents to a need to share. And believe it or not, that sounds incredibly simplistic, and it is. That's what 4-star generals get paid to make, those simplistic observations. We state the obvious. But that simplistic observation, actually, when operationalized, if you start out with an idea that you'd like to share something when writing it up, rather than withholding it from people and then having to do a dumbed-down version later on, you obviously can share a great deal sooner than otherwise. For what it's worth, in CENTCOM, when I got there, I said, look, at the very least, why can't we get our traditional closest partners, the Four Eyes and so forth, as they're sometimes called, of the UK, Australia, New Zealand, and Canada, in the actual staff, not as liaison officers or senior national representatives. I want them in the actual staff. And in fact, we were doing a big operation the other day, quite a compartmented one, and all of a sudden I realized that the guy running it at CENTCOM was the Deputy J3, an Australian Major General, and doing a terrific job, as, by the way, they did in they're also the Deputy J3 in Iraq, and oftentimes ended up being the J3. So again, I think a lot of this has to do with mindset. It has to do, again, with a sense that you're going to cooperate. I think one of the talents that General McChrystal has brought to Kabul has been an ability to build teams. He's done it with interagency organizations. He's the longest serving ever Joint Special Operations Command commander. That's the commander of our standing counterterrorist joint task force. And under his watch, he built that from being a very focused organization on some very discrete tasks that used to be the essence of those organizations, to taking on much greater capability tied into all of our different interagency elements, particularly those in the intelligence community. So again, you have to build a team, you have to sustain the team. That takes a considerable amount of effort. But it is more than worth it, and our closest partners always have been those from your country, and we are deeply appreciative of the great service and the enormous sacrifices that they have made alongside our soldiers in places like Iraq, Afghanistan, and the Balkans. So thank you very much.
All right, there's one right here. Joe. My name is Joe McCall. I'm just a regular, ordinary citizen. I've read a book that you co-authored called The Army Field Manual for Counterinsurgency. I've read most of it. It's a stunning book, by the way, and every American citizen ought to read this book if they want to understand what you guys are up to and why. When I read it, the thing that kept hitting me on almost every page is the massive long-term commitment of military people and money to make counterinsurgency effective. The core tenet of counterinsurgency in that manual is protection of the civilian population. And that can't be accomplished in a short period of time, nor with a short number of people. A is my presupposition of the cost, that in fact it's very large and very long term. Is that an accurate assessment? And B, do you think that if we think about the military people who are going to be in harm's way for extended periods of time, I mean, that's not a financial cost. That's a real serious human cost. What's your assessment of we talk about the boots on the ground, what's your assessment of for lack of a better term, the butts in the lazy chairs in front of the television watching CNN? How many years is it reasonable? America does not have a great track record of wanting to keep doing this.
Well, first of all, you know, the counterinsurgency manual, just like all this other stuff, was a tremendous team effort. We were very privileged to have a terrific group of smart folks, a combination of practitioners and historians and all the rest of that. But it was a significant document, and it did influence an enormous amount of what it is that we were doing to train, educate, prepare our leaders and forces for what we needed them to do in Iraq, in Afghanistan. And frankly, when you talk about the surge in Iraq, the real surge was not the ultimately 30,000 additional forces that went in, although that was hugely important. The real surge was a surge in ideas. It was a change in approach. It was a change to a focus on security of the population and doing it by living with the people. You can't commute to this fight. You can't live in a big base, drive around the neighborhood a couple times a day and go back to the big base to spend the evening and expect the people to open up to you. You have to share their risk. You have to be with them full time. And indeed, we created, for example, some 77 additional joint locations of Iraqi and coalition forces just in Baghdad alone, to give you a sense of how that operationalized. So A, you're right, it is about securing the population. That is intensive and demanding work. I have always used the term that our effort in Afghanistan and in Pakistan, by the way, would require a sustained, substantial commitment, and that I think does capture indeed what it is that you're getting at. Now, with respect to those terrific young men and women, the new greatest generation, as Tom Brokaw himself labeled them when he was with us in Iraq one time after seeing the great work that they were doing, those great young men and women wearing our uniform, the ones who are deploying again and again, some of whom now have, you know, accumulated 4 or more years in combat, they have performed magnificently, but there is no question that we have asked an extraordinary amount of them and of their family. And the sacrifices of sustained absences, time away from loved ones, and of course being in harm's way and risking it all. Again, we've asked a great deal of a relatively small subset of our population. And that is why I mentioned up front how important the recognition by individuals like you is of what it is that they and their families are doing for our country.